Hello, everyone, and welcome to Discover Health Podcast. I'm Dr. Trish Morry, physician, best-selling author, and the Health Catalyst speaker. And I am so excited to finally have met and be talking with Maury Zelkovich. And the title today is As He Is, the world's only Brainwave Entrainment Engineer. Welcome, Morry.
Oh, thank you very much, Dr. Trish. It's a super pleasure to be here. I can't tell you how honored I am.
Oh, well, I'm so glad you would come on the show with me because I use your modality of brainwave entrainment just about every night for myself, and I have for years, and it's really helped my stress levels and it's helped me sleep better. Those would be the two top things I would say that I notice myself about using the modality has been for me. I'm sure there's a lot of other subconscious things going on for me too, but we're going to get right into this. So the first thing, of course, I want to do, Morry, is share your bio with folks so they get a sense of your background, and then we'll get right into the questions. Is that good?
That's fantastic. Thank you.
Oh, sure. So Maury Zelkovich, as a child, Morry had many problems, ranging from hearing thousands of voices in his head to severe depression. He also had a very big mouth, was always getting into trouble, and was unbelievably accident prone. Something inside him made him start looking into the brainwave entrainment field when he began to observe that sometimes time would seem to move faster and more pleasantly than other times. He eventually made the connection that when he seemed to move quicker, the sounds he was hearing were more rhythmic in nature. And when time seemed to painfully stand still, the surrounding sounds were far more disjointed. After many years of using other people's products with some limited success, he was determined to figure out why these recordings seemed to work only in a minor way, when all the research he was reading suggested the effects should be much more dominant than what he was experiencing. He decided that the best route to understanding was learning at the feet of an expert in the field. So he contacted the world's foremost expert in the field of brainwave entrainment and discovered some invaluable secrets that he could not get anywhere else. Now, he has conquered those extra voices in his head and severe depression, and his mission in life is to help others improve the quality of their lives without the use of dangerous and habit-forming drugs. So, Morry, that's pretty amazing. So, that's some information about and inklings into your personal experience. But I love to start this with a little more information. Tell us more about how did you get into this and how has you come to be of service the way you are now?
Thank you. It's interesting that I would come to be of service considering my origins were completely selfish. Basically, as long as I can remember, I lived life in a depression bubble. Everyone's in a bubble now, right? So for me, I was in a bubble of depression, isolation. It was to the point where if I saw people or heard people laughing off in the distance, I assumed they were laughing at me. I literally woke up every morning, crossed my fingers, opened the curtains, and hoped I would see mushroom clouds. Because if I saw mushroom clouds, it meant I didn't have to live another day. And every time I opened the curtains and didn't see mushroom clouds, I got even more depressed. What a lovely way to start the day, knowing I had to live through everything I was living through over and over and over again. The ultimate disgusting Groundhog Day. The same existence every single day. Interestingly enough, I tried to kill myself 5, 6, 7, 8, who knows how many times. But to be honest, if you want to die, it's pretty easy to do it. So I kind of had an awareness that I really didn't want to die. When I realized I couldn't find a way to die, I figured that I had to find a way to live. And that's what started me researching. And the first thought that entered my head was, where's my problem? Well, it's all coming from here. It's all coming from my mind, from my brain. So I started researching the brain. Now, I'm not a doctor, and I'm not even a quote unquote university educated psychologist. Well, I am actually. I'm not a psychologist, but I have an honors degree in psychology and a minor in sociology. But I started reading and researching neural dynamics, neural pathways, neurology, anything I could find, quantum mechanics, neurochemistry. anything I could find that might have some relevance to the brain and how it works, because I tried changing how I was thinking and that wasn't working. I just kept falling back and falling back. And as many of you know, the minute you start failing at something, it just makes you feel more despondent. You know, that you get hopeful and then you crash, and then you get hopeful and then you crash. And the more hopeful and the more crashes that happen, the worse it gets. So I went through all of this. I started understanding, at least my understanding, of what I needed to do to help myself. So the first things I tried, of course, because I figured I need to change my brain chemistry, were the usual suspects. So I first went to psychologists and psychiatrists, and they all told me, because back then they didn't give pills for anything. They said, Morry, you seem to be coping pretty well. There's really not a lot we can do for you. And they sent me on my way. The next attempt was drugs and alcohol. So I became addicted to marijuana primarily, but I used cocaine and acid and bennies and, you know, all the fun stuff, trying to forget, trying to lessen the pain. All that did was spend money I didn't have, and, you know, gave me a few seconds here and there of relief, but it really didn't help. So I got even more despondent because I think I'm understanding what's happening, but it's not helping my understanding. And I didn't want to live the rest of my life feeling this way. So what I did was I kind of broke it down into quantum pieces. Into little pieces, little itty bitty pieces. And I started realizing that when I have negative thoughts, which I had plenty of, those negative thoughts literally created brainwave activity. And why is the brainwave activity like alpha? You've probably all heard of alpha and beta and theta and delta. So your thoughts literally create in different regions of your brain these frequencies. And what these frequencies really are is they're just measuring how many times your neurons, which are your brain cells, pulse, a minute electric impulse, how many times a second they pulse. That dictates what kind of state that neuron is in. What I learned in my research, though, and this is the really valuable part, is that when I have these thoughts and when my neurons are pulsing at these different rates, I was creating chemistry, because that's what the neurons do. Depending on how many times they're pulsing and the region of the brain that they're pulsing in, that dictates the kind of chemistry that you're releasing. My chemistry that I was releasing because of my negative thoughts was giving me the feeling of depression and despondency, because your brain doesn't care. It doesn't judge what you're thinking. It doesn't say, hey, Morry, that's going to make you feel lousy, so I'm not going to create the chemistry to allow you to experience that. It says, Morry, this is what you've ordered from my menu. This is what you're going to get. So I realized that the brain state created the chemistry, and the chemistry creates how you feel and how you experience something. So I tried altering the chemistry. That didn't work. But it struck me, what if I can alter my brainwave activity? If I'm right, then that should change how I feel. Well, that's where the brainwave entrainment came in, because it's totally non-invasive. You put on headphones like this. They cost me $12 on Amazon, ordinary stereo headphones. I close my eyes, I lean back, I hit play, and that's it. Everything else happens automatically because of something called the frequency following response. Now that sounds all sciencey and impressive, but really anybody who likes a song and you bop your head to the song or you tap your foot to the song and you're kind of doing it mindlessly, that's what the frequency following response is. Your body is following the tones of the music. Your brain follows the tones of my recordings, and that guides it to releasing the neurotransmitters that are helpful and healthful for you. And it just naturally changes you.
So Morry, I have a number of patients that'll come in and I talk to them about, brainwave entrainment. And then they'll say, well, I'm doing mantras and I'm doing some meditation and I'm doing yoga. How is this different?
All of those things are great.
Yeah, they are. Don't get me wrong. I think they're wonderful. And I encourage the people to keep doing that. But it doesn't seem like they still get to where they want to be. They're still having the anxiety. Maybe it's improving it some. But when I recommend this to folks, how is this different? What is it doing that will help them really get, let's say, over that hump into a whole nother place?
What it's doing that's different, there's two features that are different. The first one is they have to do something for these others. And normally when you do something, you're judging yourself. Am I doing this right? Am I supposed to feel this way? Is this working the way it's supposed to be working? Am I susceptible to this? Is this good for me? Is this not helping me? Am I wasting my time? All these questions actually interfere with the benefits that these people could possibly get from these things. So they're getting benefits, but they may not be getting the benefits that they could be getting because there's too much conscious thought invading the process. When we talk about brainwave entrainment, we're not talking about a thought process. You don't have to think anything. You don't have to do anything. As a matter of fact, if your mind wanders, fine. If you think about something and you want to concentrate on that, fine. It doesn't matter. The best thing to do is just to follow whatever you feel like doing. Brainwave entrainment is an automatic process. It doesn't require your effort, and it doesn't matter who you are, your brain will react to this. This is just nature. This has nothing to do with practice or your ability or training or reading a book or taking notes or writing tests. It is entirely an automatic process that happens in the brain of everybody. As a matter of fact, I have people who've used it on dogs, cats, and horses. And it has a positive effect on them too. Now, I'm not sure the vocal aspects, although I speak in a melodic tone, have an effect. But the entrainment, anything with the brain will have a reaction to properly engineered entrainment because you are designed to experience these states naturally. And if you look at our history, when we were back living in caves, our lives were much simpler. We hunted, we, scrounged, we ate, we drank, we had sex, probably why sex feels good. Because we didn't know why we were having sex back then. It just felt good. That was a prerogative of nature to make us have, give birth and perpetuate the species. But that's basically all we did. Our lives didn't have to worry about taxes. We weren't worried about health because we didn't have any concept of what health was. We weren't worried about anything. Every day we lived in the moment. Every day was about survival, and every day was that second. So it makes sense that our brains would have had natural processes where we were dominantly active in specific states. Our brains, the bottom line here is, doctor, that the brain is designed to create these neurotransmitters, endorphins, and hormones. They are designed to do that, much the way a car is designed to run on certain amounts of oil, gasoline, brake fluid, steering fluid, alternators. All these things are designed to work in unison to create a smooth running engine. Your brain is designed the same way. And even though we have evolved quite a bit in the millennia since we've lived in caves, our brains are still basically designed the same way, just as our noses have changed. We still breathe through our two nostrils also. Just as our eyes have changed, we still see with our eyes. Just as our ears have changed their shapes, we still hear. Our brain is still designed to function on proper amounts of these chemicals being created by the brain. Our brains don't create these chemicals. Look, one of the situations with the amyloid protein, right, in Alzheimer's, is that as we get older, we don't sleep as well. Because we don't get into delta sleep, part of the natural cleaning process of this amyloid protein stops functioning as efficiently. So that is a feature of our lives today. We don't get proper brainwave states that could contribute to our mental health and to our physical mental well-being, like the physical well-being of your brain and your body. Brainwave entrainment gives you that ability again. It puts you in a state, because the recordings last on average about half an hour, which means you're getting about 20 minutes of stable brainwave frequency that your brain can follow. And most brains will follow for at least 10 minutes, sometimes 15 and even 20, especially if you have more experience listening. And that gives you the dominant frequencies, which gives you the production of neurotransmitters, endorphins, and hormones that your brain is designed to function with.
So, Morry, let's just back up a little bit and just, brainwave entrainment. What does that mean? So the basic listeners are like, oh, I get what he means.
Sure. Brainwave entrainment simply means monkey see, monkey do. So I'll expose you to a frequency such as ba, 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 ba. And that's a frequency. That's how many pulses per second. So there's a pause, there's a pulse, there's a pause, there's a pulse. And your neurons do the monkey see, monkey do. They start following that frequency. So your neurons might be doing this, And then slowly they start entraining. They start following each other. That's what entrainment means. It's a fancy word for following. That's all it is. So when your neurons start following the pulse rate that I'm giving you, they start getting the benefits, because now instead of your neurons being in a dominant state for a second here, 3 seconds there, 4 seconds here, now they're in dominant states for 10, 15 minutes at a time. And we all know now that because whenever you're in any state, your neurons are releasing neurochemistry. But if we're all over the place and we're not in dominant states ever, then it makes sense that we're not getting the neurochemistry quantity that we need. Now, one of the beautiful things about the Recode system and about what you do is you teach people not just various things they need to do, but how to eat better. Mm-hmm. Because the funny thing about neurochemistry is if you don't have the precursors, if you don't have the building blocks, it doesn't matter what you do. You're never going to experience these brain states properly, because you won't get the neurotransmitter production. You won't get the endorphins. You won't get any of that.
And if you have inflammation all through the brain, then you can't, you can train all you want, but it's only going to stay there for a short time and then keep going back to the insanity, high wired beta state that is too out of control all the time. And therefore
that's
you can't
correct.
sleep. I mean, you brought up brain waves earlier of, folks, delta is, as Morry said, that's when we're in the slowest state, if you will, frequency, and the deepest, it's consistent with like deep, deep sleep. And then the alpha state is next speed or frequency up would be theta, which Morry, why don't you tell folks about that and take them through theta and alpha and beta, just so they have a sense of these.
All right. So theta is an interesting one, because a lot of the research in Alzheimer's says that theta is a problem because it's dominant. Now, my theory and my experience has been actually that the theta is variable. It's all over the place. Remember how I was talking about how the brain frequencies, there's nothing dominant, everything's all over the place. The dominant theta frequencies actually release a neurotransmitter, neurochemical. Some people call it a hormone, some people call it a neurotransmitter, but it's called LTP. And that stands for long-term potentiation. It is said that kids learn easier than adults because their dominant frequency tends to be more in theta. Adults tends to be more all over the place in beta. So theta actually produces this hormone. I'm told from the research, and I found research about this like 20 years ago, but no one believed me, so I never did anything about it. Now the research is starting to bear me out. So with this LTP present, you actually form neural pathways, memory pathways, literal physical pathways in the brain. Without LTP, in one ear, out the other, just like mom and dad used to tell us all when we were kids, right? When I talk to you, it goes in one ear and out the other. So that's a really important aspect about theta. Now, theta is also, if you equate it with sleep, theta is kind of like the hypnagogic state or the state where you're dreaming in. Mm-hmm. That's why a lot of people will tend to remember their dreams right as they wake up. But then as they go more into the faster brainwave states, they start to lose the memory of it. Mm-hmm. And that's because they're going out of theta into beta and, a variation of different, different frequencies. So theta is great for learning. Theta is great for memory retention. Theta is great for just relaxing. One of the most important things when we're dealing with cognitive issues, with brain issues, is being able to relax. Because when we relax, it makes everything easier. Our blood vessels constrict when we're stressed. Our blood vessels are how we carry oxygen to the various regions of our body, including our brain. So imagine if your blood vessel's like this, and now it's like this, you're getting less oxygen to every cell in your body because you're getting less blood to every cell in your body. And oxygen is what heals you. Oxygen is what keeps you healthy. So if you don't have oxygen going to these areas, or not as much as it needs, then you're kind of fighting a losing battle. So being relaxed. Now, alpha is great for that too. As a matter of fact, do you know, doctor, why we close our eyes when we go to sleep?
Tell us.
It naturally slows our brainwave activity.
Okay.
Naturally slows it. So the minute you close your eyes, if you pay attention to yourself with your eyes open, like I'd like everybody to pay attention to how they feel here, inside their head, inside their body. and really pay attention to all the little nuances. Okay. Like, do you feel little stresses in your forehead, anything at all? And then I want you to keep paying attention and close your eyes. Don't do this if you're listening to this driving though. Close your eyes and give yourself a few seconds. You'll start feeling changes happening. That's because your brain naturally starts slowing down when we close our eyes, and it prepares us for sleep. That's why we don't sleep with our eyes open. Now, some of us do sleep with our eyes open, and there's always going to be exceptions to the rule, but that's one of the reasons why we close our eyes, because it naturally slows our brain down.
And then alpha is the next level, and then beta.
Alpha is the next, right.
Talk to folks just about the differences between those two.
Okay, so alpha tends to be the state most people are in when they're meditating, because you'll notice when most people meditate, they close their eyes. So they go naturally into alpha. It slows their brainwave activity down. It helps to calm the body and the mind. And it's primarily, a beautiful relaxation. It just calms everything down. It calms down the central nervous system. It calms down the amygdala. Now, the amygdala, for those of you that don't know, it's kind of like a little walnut at the base of the brain. And it's known as the reptilian brain. So it's more instinct. It's more fight and flight. Interesting thing. Research, I haven't seen research about brainwave entrainment, but brainwave entrainment, in my mind, and apparently in Dr. Bredeson's also, is kind of like meditation on steroids. Because again, there's no effort on your part. Meditation's phenomenal, and if you do it, keep doing it. But if you're one of those many who have an issue with meditating, who can't quite get there, brainwave entrainment will basically guide you without any effort at all. And the thing is, meditation, and you can search for this in Google Scholar, studies have been done, 8 weeks of meditation, amateurs, people are just being taught right now. I think it's half an hour a day for 8 weeks. Their amygdala shrinks. And when the amygdala shrinks, its effect over you, its power over you shrinks as well. So that means the flight and fight response is reduced as well, which means panic is reduced, which means stress is reduced, which means anxiety is reduced, which means you're better able to cope.
Right. Awesome.
Okay. One of the things that makes us have poor memory is that we're too stressed about our memory. And the stress puts pressure on us. How many times have you done things that easy for you to do, but as soon as someone says, do it right now, do it fast, and I'm going to watch you, now your hands start shaking and you're freaking out, and it's like all of a sudden this thing you're amazingly efficient at, you're clumsy. Right?
Well, you add stress to anything.
Right. And it's always going to do that. Now, stress is a good thing. Stress was designed, cortisol is a stress hormone, right? And it's designed to help you in times of need. The problem is we're not supposed to be in need all the time.
Right.
So it wears the system down. It wears your body down. Using alpha helps you to reduce that stress, relieve the tension in your body and your mind, and help your body to only produce these necessary stress hormones when they're necessary, as opposed to all the time. Because all the time, that stresses everything.
So when is beta then good and when is beta bad? And how does that?
Okay, beta is interesting because beta is, generally accepted as awake and alert. That's your awake and alert state. But people need to understand, I've had an EEG on me when I've been talking and giving lectures. There are times during my lecture where I am dominant in delta. Now I'm fully awake. It's not like I'm giving a lecture and I'm going, I'm not sleeping at the wheel kind of, right? I'm fully conscious. So the thing to realize is that you always have all features, all brainwave activity, all rates. Gamma is a very interesting rate, especially when it comes to the amyloid protein, because it has a similar effect. Gamma, for those of you that don't know, is really fast. So beta, which is awake and alert, might be up to 28 or 30 times a second, your neurons pulsing on and off. Gamma is 40 and over. That's fast. If you hear that, it's more going to sound like a hum than a pulse. But it has very similar effects to delta. So you can actually get benefits of sleep while you're awake.
Yeah, I had heard that when they did research with some of the most, famous monks and so forth. And when they had them in a meditative state and they did EEGs, instead of finding them in, let's say, alpha, they actually found them in gamma.
That's correct.
Yeah, which is amazing.
Because they're not actually physically or mentally trying to go into gamma or alpha or theta or beta or delta.
Right.
They're just putting themselves into a state, and then their minds go where it's supposed to go by itself. You see, when we try to do something, we put pressure on ourselves. And we also give ourselves the ability to fail, because that's what the word try means. Try means I'm going to make an attempt, but I'm totally okay with failing.
Right.
When you do something, there's no option for failure there, because you're just going to do it. So when you meditate, when you use brainwave entrainment, you know, whatever floats your boat, as they say, do it. That's the trick. Do it, because you will feel resistance at different points to doing these things. You will feel edgy. You will feel this. You will feel that, because it's your consciousness and your unconscious. By the way, your conscious, your subconscious, and your unconscious mind, they're all the same thing. Okay. This is just science's way, psychology's way, however you want to describe it, of separating different features of the same thing. But it's your mind. Your mind is your mind. Your unconscious, your subconscious, they're all the same thing. They just have different things. Okay, for instance, you're a doctor and you do your doctoring, okay, when you're at work. When you're at home with your family, you might be more of a family member. When you're out with your friends, you're more of a social person, but you're still the same person. You're just exercising different facets of the same thing. So when people talk about your unconscious and your subconscious are in conflict, or your conscious and your unconscious are in conflict, no. That never happens. Be careful what you believe, because you'll create problems that don't exist. What we believe is very, very strong. If we believe we will get better, there is an excellent chance that we're going to get better. There's scientific evidence out there that says if you meditate, there's a good chance you will heal faster and recover quicker from different events in your life. So,
but as you say, there are also patterns in the mind, in the brain, that if we don't try and help them shift, then those patterns will remain kind of locked in.
Exactly. That's true. Right. But remember, there's also chemicals that get created as a result of our thoughts and our different brainwaves. So some of the research I've been reading shows that we're missing delta as we sleep, as we get older. So we want to help increase delta. We want to help increase gamma, because with people with cognitive issues, they tend to exhibit very little gamma. Also, there's another rhythm in the beta area, believe it or not. It's called the sensory motor rhythm. Are you familiar with that?
No.
The sensory motor rhythm is between 12 to 15 hertz, which is kind of like low beta. So when I say hertz, again, I just want to clarify, that just means how many times your neuron is pulsing a minute electric impulse in a second. Okay. So 12 to 15 times a second seems to be missing in people with cognitive issues. But my theory is that if you can retrain the brain to get into gamma, to get into delta, to get into the sensory motor rhythm, then the neurochemistry that is naturally produced there will suddenly start to get produced again. Once that chemistry is back in place, cognitive abilities should improve appropriately.
So how does this work? You talked in your bio about, you used other people's products, and then you sat at the feet, if you will, of the expert and learned something. So what's different? What's different between other technologies that are out there? And yours is called the Morry method, correct?
That's because of my unique bent, if you will, on how I do things. So there's a lot of other people out there who have very good products and very good technologies. So I want to preface anything I'm going to say now by saying I am not putting down anything. Because to be honest, clean air, clean water are the only two things that are actually good for every single human being on the planet.
Right.
Peanut butter could be a great source of protein for some people, and it can give them anaphylactic shock. Right? Sure. So it can kill you, or it could help you be healthy, depending on who you are. So I'm not bad-mouthing anybody. I'm just saying I'm different. So for instance, many people who do brainwave entrainment already use something called binaural beats.
Yeah.
Now, binaural beats help to synchronize the hemispheres, and there are benefits definitely to synchronizing the hemispheres. They're also quite relaxing. But the thing about a binaural beat is, if any of you have that at home, what I'd like you to do the next time you hit play is I want you to listen, and you'll hear bump, 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 bump. And then I want you to take a headphone and take it away from your head. And this is what's going to happen. Bump, 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 bump. Bump, 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 bump. So what's basically happening is you're getting a ghost image. You're not really getting entrainment. You're hearing one tone in one ear. Let's for the sake of argument, just call it 10. And then you're hearing another tone in this ear, and let's call it 12. The difference between is the pulse you're hearing. So then you'd hear bump, 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 bump. If it was 20 and 10, you'd hear bump, 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 bump. It's the brain making a ghost image. And what's required to do that is to help synchronize the hemispheres. The difference is I don't use binaural beats, because the power of a binaural beat is kind of like this. If you were looking at it as a sine wave, the power of an isochronic or monaural tone is like this. The difference between the peak and the valley is where entrainment happens. So if you have only a small distance between the peak and the valley, you get some effect, but not much. But you also get disassociation along with the hemispheric synchronization. So synchronizing the hemispheres is good for you. Having the disassociation is good too, because it takes your mind off your troubles. So there's definite benefits there. My entrainment tends to be far stronger, more effective from the respect of entrainment itself, because I use isochronic and monaural tones. But I'm also developing new tone styles that are even stronger than those. But that's the basic difference. But not just that. Binaural beats, because what I showed you, you can only have one signal. Interestingly enough, the brain is multifaceted. I mean, there's many parts, but there's two separate hemispheres, right? And I can actually entrain the brain to two different frequencies. So I can entrain your left hemisphere to one frequency and your right hemisphere to another frequency. The way perception works, it goes like this. So information in the left ear goes to the right hemisphere. Information in the right ear goes to the left hemisphere. And what's really interesting, information in the left side of both eyes goes to the right hemisphere. Information in both halves of the right, like right half of the eyes, goes to the left hemisphere. Very interesting how perception works. So the beauty of what I do is that we're giving the brain full exercise instead of just partial exercise. We're giving it stronger exercise, but even more so than that, even though there are benefits to meditating and having your brain hemispherically connected so that everything is in sync, that's not how we live our lives. There is almost nothing that happens in our lives other than meditation where our hemispheres are synchronized.
Now, you talk also in some of the material that I was reading through is a cortical evoked response versus these binaural beats you're referring to. What's the difference there? And
okay, so the cortical layer
these type
of the
of
brain,
tones you create help with more of a cortical evoked response, correct?
Right. There's a much weaker effect with the binaural tones. That's right. So the cortical layer of the brain is basically the top of the brain, the surface layer of the brain. Unless you put probes into the brain, you can't really tell what frequencies it's pulsing at, except on the surface. So when the doctor puts on those little pads on your head to check out your brain waves, they're really only seeing the top layer activity. But generally speaking, you can infer that if it's stable up top, it's probably stable inside too. So the cortical evoked response is stronger when you have a stronger signal causing it. And the cortical evoked response is nothing more than the response evoked or caused by the stimulation. That's what it means, cortical evoked response. So evoked is more or less just an action of, like, if I push you, I'm evoking you forward. And that doesn't really make sense grammatically, but it tells you what it is. Because I prefer to speak English than science-y talk. You know, to me, if you understand how your brain works, if you understand why your brain works, if you understand why you have the type of thoughts you have, then it takes away fear. Because fear is the worst thing. Because fear holds you back. Fear keeps you from listening. Fear keeps you from everything. So what's really important here is to understand that there really is nothing to be afraid of with your brain. We don't, I mean, look, the brain is literally the undiscovered country. We know so little about the brain, it's not even funny. But that being said, we do improve our understanding of the brain every single day. Would you agree?
Absolutely. I mean, there's so much we don't know. People out there, they think science knows the answer to everything today. We absolutely do not. That's really important to understand. That's why we call it a practice in medicine and not a mastering. We don't do that. It's not really possible in our lifetimes. The other thing is, another thing in my world that I'm a specialist in, or at least am a huge student of, is the fascial system, the connective tissue system, and we know even less about that than we know about the brain. So it's fascinating, and that's what keeps me so excited about all of it. Is there's so much still to learn, and that's why I do the podcast, so I can ask folks like you that know a lot more about what you're doing than I can. Well, even
remember, I don't know more. I don't know more. I have a different understanding.
Right.
That's all. And the understanding so far seems to be good. But understand that, okay, for instance, Revitamind is a great example. Revitamind is the program that Dr. Bredesen wrote Neural Agility 3 times in his first book, right?
Right.
So that is designed to help people as they age to keep their sharpness and to regain that edge that we lose as we age.
Mm-hmm.
But I learned new things that until Dr. Bredesen published his book and people started buying Revitamind, there was no point in me updating a program no one was buying.
Right.
The updates come as we get better understandings and as we learn things. And I fully expect in another few years, as new information comes out, because there is new information coming out all the time about the brain, about our synapses, about how it operates, all these things. And as I learn new things, I will come out with a Revitamind Ultra version 2 and a Revitamind Ultra version 12. And I'm always coming up with new ideas. I have currently in my reservoir of different programs, I have 16 different programs. Out of that, probably 10 or 12 of them are fully original with new techniques introduced into each and every system. And then the others are variations on the recordings and systems that I have. I currently have 22 under development.
Wow.
Yeah, because understanding, this is what motivates me. Mm-hmm. It doesn't mean my initial programs are bad or outdated, because they're still perfect. Hey, our brains are still our brains. They're still great. Right. You wouldn't practice something that you didn't believe in, right?
Right. No.
I'm the same as you. I will not release something that I don't believe in. Just because I have new knowledge and I can advance my systems further doesn't mean my earlier systems are a waste of time.
No, but also we learn that we can add and we can adapt and we can optimize. And your Revitamind program is the program that, as you say, Dr. Dale Bredesen, who is one of the top Alzheimer's holistic approach to try and reverse or prevent cognitive decline, has again promoted your program with neural agility in particular. And that's where I learned about it, and I recommend it to so many people. And as I say, I use it myself. But then you have improved on that with an added addition. Tell people about that, where I think it sounds like you're getting into the gamma.
Right. So the first thing I did was I changed the bass frequency of all of the recordings. So when I say frequency in this case, I'm talking about the bass frequency in the way of a note, the letter A, for instance. Back before the 1940s, music was tuned to the bass frequency of 420, I think it's 432 hertz. That's right. And then a bunch of people got involved and switched the bass to 440 hertz. And the interesting question I had was, why? What possible reason would they have to change the bass of music? Turns out 432 hertz is easier for the nervous system to accommodate. So I recalibrated all of the main Revitamind recordings, and that includes the original Revitamind, to 432 hertz. So it's easier. It just seems easier on the nervous system. People seem to get easier results. But then I included these things that I was mentioning already. I had learned about the sensory motor rhythm tends to be missing in people with cognitive impairments. So my theory is, hey, if it's missing, let's bring it back. If you lost it, let's bring it back. If you lose your memory, maybe this will help to bring it back. So I created a sensory motor rhythm recording. Half an hour, same thing. You put on the headphones, you close your eyes, you lie down. I went through all these things. I added different aspects, but I realized that I'm missing something, especially for patients who are suffering from cognitive issues, and that's the eyes. Because the eyes are another way that you can entrain the brain. And I figured, what if I could create a photic system, a system that uses light, flashing lights, to elicit the same kind of response? So I created something that I call the Cortical Cleaner. And when people get the Revitamind Ultra program, they actually get a web link to a special program called the Cortical Cleaner. And the nice thing about that is, flashing lights, you may remember from the 70s and 80s, gave people seizures. They didn't give a lot of people seizures, but they gave enough people seizures that it made it into the news.
Right.
So you have to watch this either on your phone or on your computer screen. And what you do is, the instructions say to lower the light so it's comfortable. Bright flashing light, like in a strobe, cause or can bring on a seizure. And I think it's 1 in 3,000 women and 1 in 7,000 men. That's still too much of a risk for me. So I make sure that they have the instructions, lower the brightness so you can just look at this. And I have a dot in the center. So they focus on the dot, their peripheral vision gets the flashing lights. And I've been getting wonderful reports from people. They're happy after they watch the thing. They feel better, they're sharper, they're cognitively more aware, their memory is better. Now, the research that talks about gamma being used for this, I also have a gamma audio recording that people can use as well. But the research says that it can be helpful, but the research is in its infancy. So it's showing that for a short period of time, these effects last. But the research only happened for a week or two. So they don't know what long-term effects would be. And as far as I'm concerned, it can do no harm as long as you follow it properly. And that's the most important thing for me. But as long as you use it regularly, even if the effects are only temporary, if you do it enough that, it's kind of like taking a pill. Some of us are on low dosage prednisone for most of our lives because it helps to reduce the inflammation enough, and it's maybe 2 or 3 milligrams, so it's below the level of likely getting bad side effects. But you need to keep taking it to maintain the results. Well, this is, even if it's only temporary, maybe it's the same thing, where if you use it regularly, it will help you maintain your beneficial results. I'm okay with that.
So, Morry, talk about you also did some with the Brazilian military and also Jamaican research. Talk a bit about that, and then we'll need to wrap it up today. But I'm loving this. I think maybe we'll have to have another talk. Really
anytime. Well, so the Brazilian military was funny because I got a call from a captain in the Brazilian military years ago, and I thought it was a crock. I thought it was a friend of mine acting, right? He had an interpreter on the phone and the whole bit, right? And I thought I was being punked. I was sure I was being punked. But he ended up giving me a phone number to call, and it was actually a Brazilian phone number, and it was actually to the Brazilian government, and they led me through, and it was confirmed that it was actually the military. So what happened was somebody stole my website. Okay, this is for a system of mine called Quantum Mind Power. They literally stole it. They even put my picture on it still, but they deleted the 2 recordings that had my voice on them speaking English. And they were selling my product with my face, with my name. I wasn't getting a penny. But this Brazilian captain bought it, and he was so impressed with the results, he looked my name up on the internet, he called me, and he said, would you mind coming up with a research protocol for me to use so I could use this? We have lots of problems in Brazil. Our police and our military police aren't looked upon very well. We don't have good public relations with the public. I think this could help a lot. And I've got a grant from my branch in the military so that I can do a research paper. Would you mind if I did one? And I said, I'll tell you what, you can use my product, you can use my protocol, but I want the research when you're done.
Right.
And I want to be able to publish it. And he said, sure, no problem. So I came up with a very simple protocol. It was just a 2-week protocol. They did it on a class of military police students, and they found that it improved their memory, it improved their cognition, their ability to learn improved, their sleep improved. They were able to relate better because when they're training for the military police, they actually are on duty as well. So they have very long hours. They're in class like 6 hours a day, and then they're working 6-7 hours a day. And they had better, the people who were in the control or in the actual group using my recordings actually had much better results. So it was positive, 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 positive. Then I got contacted by a doctor from now this is a education doctor, not a medical doctor, from a Jamaican university. And he wanted to do a study on pre and post exam stress levels. I think it was in the math area.
Mm-hmm.
So he again did a study, and I said, yeah, no problem, but I want the results when you're done. So he gave me the results when they're done, and they showed that the students slept better, that they were better. They actually did much better on the exams than the students who were in the control group who didn't have anything to do with this.
That's awesome. Yeah. So that's what people want to hear about. Does this stuff work? That's what the research is panning out to say. Yeah, so that's awesome. So, Morry, how do folks find out more? How do they learn more? How do they
find me? Okay, the best place for them to go would probably be, because I have like about 100,000 websites. I don't want to inundate people and confuse them. That's the last thing that I'm here for. So the best place to go probably would be a website called www.activemindsglobal.com. So that's minds with an S, global.com. That's actually the website that Dr. Bredesen found my product on. Funny enough, he bought it. I didn't know. Funny enough, all of a sudden, one day, I started getting 4 and 5 sales a day from a website that's been up for 7 years and never made one sale. And a customer called up and asked a few questions, and I said, sure, but if you don't mind, can you tell me how you heard of me? And she said, yeah, I did a search on neural agility after I read Dr. Bredesen's book. I said, Dr. Bredesen, who's that? And it went away.
Yeah, that's awesome. Because there's so many people that I have recommended it to. And if folks are, again, activemindsglobal.com, or also if you go to the shop of my website, discoverhealthfmc.com, you're going to get a link right to Active Minds Global. So if you're more familiar with my website and you don't want to go searching around, just go there and go right to Active Minds Global from there. So either way.
Dr. Trish, can I just interrupt quickly here? Remember what we were talking about before we went on the air?
Mm-hmm.
About Dr. Bredesen?
Yes.
Please let them know about that.
Oh, absolutely. So if you go in to Active Minds Global, and is that particularly just from my website, or is it even if they go to, okay.
It's strictly from yours.
Okay. So if you go to my website, discoverhealthfmc.com, you go to the shop, and then you look for Active Minds Global, and you follow the link to the website, and then you purchase either the regular Revitamind program or what is Ultra?
Actually, Revitamind Ultra isn't available. It will be as an upgrade.
It will be
let people try the basic version first. And when they start seeing some benefits, if they want, they can upgrade. They can contact me and upgrade to the Ultra. But they'll only get the discount if they order from your link and they put in Dr. Bredesen's name in the code.
Towards the end, you'll be asked to put in a code, and you just put in Dr. Bredesen. DRBREDESEN is Dr. Bredesen's name. And you're going to get a discount of how much is it?
$10. So this is inexpensive to begin with. It's $97 if you buy it directly from me, but if you buy it from Dr. Trish, you'll get it for $87.
And again, folks, that's not $87 for only like the next 6 months, and then you got to buy it again and again and again. This is forever. And I have it on my cell phone. So at night, my cell phone's not near me, and I put my earphones on and I just say, Siri, play, neural agility, and there we go. So it's so simple. It's just such
and if I could just add one quick thing as well, I've been using some of my recordings for 20 and 30 years, and they do not lose their effectiveness at all.
Right. And the idea that people think, well, how long will this last? And, can I keep using it? Or am I going to get beyond the ability of it to help me?
No.
The answer is
no. Actually, it's yes, no, yes, no, no, yes.
Right.
Actually, you won't get used to it. Some companies may be out there telling you, like if you do research, and I encourage you to do research, that you get used to a certain level and then you graduate to the next level and the next level. That actually isn't the case with properly engineered entrainment. You can use the same recording as long as it's been properly engineered for your entire lifetime.
Wow.
And the beautiful thing, we didn't discuss this, but very quickly, and I know you're stuck for time, but one of the beautiful things about this system is that not only do you use it for your own benefit, if you have caregivers, if you have family members who are helping you,
Oh,
this can help them just as
absolutely.
much as it's helping you to have more patience, to be more understanding, to be more helpful, to have more energy, to sleep better.
Absolutely. I had one woman say, my husband and I are going to do it together. And then she'd come in and
Beautiful.
say, well, we haven't started yet because he's not get, we find it hard to get us together to do it. I said, well, stop waiting for him.
Yeah.
Get on there. And as soon as he sees how much better you feel, he's going to get on with you. And so, I just encourage them to jump on board. So, Morry, this has been awesome. And the last question I love to end the podcast with all of my guests is, what is the number one secret you would share with people for living a healthy life?
Okay, can we make it a happy and healthy life?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, good. So I have a little, when I went through my 40 years of depression, I kind of came up with a technique, which I'm sure has, millions of people know about, not because I developed it, but because I didn't know about it. I'm sure a lot of people have thought of it, but this is what you do. So it's basically an exercise in gratitude and in training the brain to think positive and to look for the good in life. Because the more your brain looks for good, the more good you're going to find. That's just how it works, period. So this is what you do. The rest of today, I want you to be looking for 10 things, or at least as many things as you can, that you're grateful for. It could be the giggle of a little baby in a crib. It can be a flower. It can be a picture. It can be a joke on the episode of Seinfeld you just saw for the 50th time. Anything at all. Anything that gives you a grin. Anything that makes you smile. And then when you go to bed at night, so don't write it down though, okay? Because the idea is you got to try to remember as many things as possible. When you go to bed, I want you to write down 3 times each, okay, in short form, each, I guess, little affirmation, each little thing that happened to you that day that made you smile, that made you feel good. If you got something from this podcast, maybe the podcast is one of the things. I enjoyed the podcast. I enjoyed the podcast. I enjoyed the podcast. When you wake up in the morning, write them down again. The next day, you look for things again to make you grateful, knowing that when you go to bed at night, you're going to have to do your best to remember all these things. So here's the benefit, and here's why it's a benefit. When you write it down before you go to sleep, the last thing you do before you go to bed is you're thinking positive things. The first thing you do in the morning, because you're writing and thinking about these affirmations you can call them affirmations, about these good things you are grateful for, to start your day is positive, beneficial things that made you smile. During the day, you spend most of the day looking for good things because when you go to sleep, you have the homework from Morry that you have to do to write them down. Now, this will program you to learn how to think positively and to look for the bright things in your life. But more importantly, you may not know this, when you write things down, you actually create a neural pathway. You create a memory pathway. And I believe that when you write something down that's positive, you actually are creating a neural pathway that's guiding you towards positivity. In other words, you have the power to rewire your brain. There's a feature of the brain called neuroplasticity. Okay. And basically, if you have like a damaged part of the brain, your brain can literally rewire around that damaged area. This is what you do when you handwrite. You're writing down more routes for your thoughts to take. And the more routes you write down that are positive, the more positive, non-potholed roads that you're driving over, the smoother your life is likely to be. So
That's
that would be
awesome,
my
Morry.
advice.
That's a great tip, and I highly recommend it because I pick a word to focus on many days, and today is gratitude. So that was perfect.
Sure.
So thank you so much, Morry. And thanks
Pleasure.
everyone for listening. And definitely check out activemindsglobal.com or again at my website in the shop and get that $10 off. So thank you, everyone, and for joining us for the world's only brainwave entrainment engineer, Maury Zelkovich. Thanks, Morry.
Thank you so much. And thank you, everybody out there. I'm here for you and I appreciate you.